Hello, my fellow fountain pen enthusiasts. I've got another pin review here for you, and I know it's been a while since I've done a pin review, and I do apologize. I am not by any means going to be stopping the channel or anything. My pin reviews may be a little bit more spread out at times due to obligations not only with family, but of course work as well. And I will continue my pin news vlog also. So again, maybe more spread out, but I will continue this channel, and then of course as I have more time, then I'll try and upload at least one video per week. But the pin that you see in front of you is really what I want to talk about today, and that is the WingSung 601A. This is actually my first 601A that I have purchased. Now I do have two other WingSung 601 models. These are the ones with the hooded nib version, whereas of course the 601A, for anybody that doesn't know, is kind of like a Schaefer Triumph type nib, and I'll show that here in a moment. Now, one of the reasons why I got this pen was probably something that your eye is gravitating towards, is that gold cap. I thought it was really attractive, kind of was reminiscent of a vintage styled pen. It reminds me a little bit of an Eversharp Skyline with that beautiful gold filled cap, and that's another reason why I wanted to get this pen. Not to mention, I wanted to try out the nib and see what it was like. Now, comparing this to the 601, so I'll pull in my 601 that I have. This is the pen that I take with me to work every day, basically. This pen has been through a lot. You'll notice that both of these have jewel caps on the top. So we have a blue one here on our 601A, and then we have kind of a pearl one here. Now, the filling mechanism on both of these pens is going to be the same. So it's going to be this piston type filler where you still have a speedline filler or a plunger, but instead of it being a rubber diaphragm, you're going to have actually a piston in here. Now you'll notice if I toss in this 601, it's got more of a steel finish jewel. Now that is supposed to be an indicator that this pen right here has a rubber diaphragm. I have taken this pen apart. It does actually have a rubber diaphragm in it. So this would be more true to what a vintage Parker Vacuumatic would be. So kind of something to kind of call out there. Now, of course, you'll notice, of course, we have a blue jewel. Now this pen is available in not only several different colors, but it's also available in different cap finishes. Now I got this wave finish. I really like the wave finish. I already have a black 601, so I thought I would get this kind of blue-green look on the barrel. And I rather like it, actually. Now, kind of give you a little bit of a close-up on what that cap looks like. Really looks nice in person. It really kind of pops, especially in certain types of light. Of course, you've got that, standard arrow clip, very reminiscent of a Parker pen. And you compare that to a standard 601, very, very similar, of course, just a different finish. Now, working our way down to the barrel, we'll take another gander at the cap here. So you'll see that it actually has 601A on it. You've got some Chinese characters there, and then you flip it over on the other side and you can see Made in China. Gotta get that to focus in a little bit. And then we see our barrel here. Now you can obviously tell if there's a line there, so we can go ahead and unscrew that, and you can see the filling mechanism right here. So there's your filler right there, and yes, it is gold, so it's not silver. It is plastic, and you can even see right there where I've kind of worn it off. I say this is plastic. This actually I think is metal. I don't know why I said it's plastic, but it's definitely coated. You can tell I've already worn that off. I don't remember it being there when I first got it, but maybe at some point I somehow wore that off when using it to fill. And then working our way down to the end, we've got, again, another blue jewel and a little gold band right here. So really there is the body of the pen. Now uncapping it, we're going to see that nib. So different than a standard 601. You've got kind of this Schaefer styled nib here that we've seen with some other Hero styled pins. I actually have one. And then of course here we've got our hooded nib, very similar to the Parker 51. And I don't know, I think that both nibs definitely provide a different writing experience. They're neither nib I would quantify them as being soft. They're both pretty nailish or stiff as far as the writing experience goes, but you get a different line width and variation in my opinion, as far as the writing experience goes. That feed is very interesting, I think. I have not taken this nib apart. I do know this nib can unscrew. You can actually change it out if you wanted to. That nib, I think, is interesting. I thought at one point it might be ebonite, but I'm pretty certain it's just plastic. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's just plastic. But in essence, that is a pen. Now, you can get this with an ink window, very similar to what I have here on my original 601. This was my first 601 that I purchased. So this one has an ink window. I decided to get this pen without an ink window. I don't really feel like I really need one. I figure once the pen runs dry, I can just simply refill it or clean it out. This section piece, of course, can unscrew if you want to unscrew it when you clean it, just to make sure you get all residual ink out of the pen. Pretty much everything in this pen you can take apart. You can take the nib and the feed out. You can actually remove your filler back here. You can tell that it's actually got notches on it, so you can remove it. For those of you that may watch my pen news vlog, there actually is a piece that you can use to take this back end off that is actually designed for it. I actually have that piece. It's laying around somewhere in my office, but I'm not going to dig for it right now. But in essence, that's the pen. So I was going to do something a little bit different on this video. Instead of popping up like the weights and the measurements, I thought I would do it on screen, and hopefully this doesn't take that long. But all of you can tell me if you'd like it better this way. So I have a caliper here. We can see what the total length of the pen is, just to give you an idea. So right now we're at about, not quite, basically 130 millimeters. A little hard to do this over the camera. So it was about 130 millimeters. Now, as far as the width of the pen, so we're going to do the kind of the widest point on the barrel. So we're at 5.4. The cap, we're at about a 6.6 as far as millimeters go. We'll take the pen. Now, as far as the uncapped form, about 122.7 millimeters in its uncapped form. Now, you know, there's really not a section on this pen, but I'll kind of do it right in the middle just to give an idea. And about 4 millimeters down, all the way down to the nib, we're about 2.2 millimeters. So, I mean, if you're going to hold it up higher, maybe around where the metal band is, you're about 5 millimeters, give or take, so about 4.9 to 5 millimeters. Now, this pen does post, and it posts very nice and secure. That's one of the things I do love about the 601s. It doesn't really throw off the balance to me. And this pen posted is 148 millimeters. So posted, you're looking at 148 millimeters in its posted form. And again, I think this is probably one of the few pens that I actually enjoy writing with posted. And it's a very comfortable writing experience in my opinion. Now, as far as weight goes, how much does this pen weigh? Get this out, turn it on, and we can see how much it weighs on screen. It's about 23.5 grams. I have been writing with this pen, and now I wouldn't say it's completely full of ink. Now we can kind of see how much the pen weighs uncapped. So you can see that that cap weighs a lot. So 12.6 grams uncapped. So it's not a, you know, the barrel, this is just plastic here, not very happy, or very heavy, I'm sorry. So your cap right there, about 10.6 grams. Make sure, put it back on there one more time. So 10.7 grams. I didn't think I had it on there all the way. So definitely the cap is the heaviest part I mean, it's definitely heavy comparatively speaking, so that kind of adds to it. So up next, we will do some comparisons to some other fountain pens as well, just to kind of give an idea of how this pen compares to some other ones. All right, so these are the three pens that I chose to compare the 601A to, and I'll start kind of from the bottom and work my way up. So, of course, here we have the 601A, and right above that we have the Jinhao 51A. So I thought this would be another nice pen to compare it to. And then above that we have the Pen BBS 266 or 308, depending upon both basically the same pen for the most part. And then we have the Pilot Metropolitan here. I know it's a fairly popular pin. So if you don't own these other two, hopefully you own the Metropolitan. So as you can tell, I mean, the largest out of this as far as overall length would be our 266 right here. The 51A, if you own that pin, it is very similar in overall length to the 601A. There's not a big difference. The cap structure is about the same. The main difference back here is, of course, going to be how this one is more of a torpedo type shape or cone shape. And this one here is a cartridge converter as well, as far as the 51A goes. Really, all of these three pins are cartridge converters. This is the only one that's unique in that perspective. So now let's look at all four of these pins in their uncapped form. Okay, so now we see all four pins in their uncapped form, and 3 out of the 4 are all pull-off caps, with the exception of our pin BBS here, that is a twist cap. So these 3 do share that much in common as far as them being pull-off caps. Now, these 2 are probably, from a overall design perspective, very similar. There's no real true section. They're more just a nice streamlined approach, whereas these 2 definitely, you can see a section there. There's a cutoff here between both pins. You have your threads here that kind of cut off the section, and then you have this step up here on the Pilot Metropolitan. Now, you know, one thing you'll notice, you can see the threads through this, and again, the 51A is a cartridge converter fountain pin, so that's one of the biggest differences between these 2 pins. Now, as far as overall length, really all 4 of these pins are very similar. And when we're talking about how, you know, comfortable it is to write unposted, I really don't mind writing with this pin either way. It's lightweight. Now, if you want more heft to your pin, I would recommend posting this pin. But because of the fact that you can really hold this pin anywhere, there's no real section, it makes it, for me, comfortable. The one thing that you do have to watch sometimes is, because there is no step here, nothing here, if you hold down too low, you could potentially put your fingers and get ink on your fingers from the feed here. But if you're holding down that low, I would imagine that you're writing on the paper, you have to write up at a very high angle. It may not be very comfortable to begin with, but something I did want to mention. Very similar, again, you know, the 51A, light pin because of the material it's made out of, but again, you can hold it anywhere. So very similar in design, but overall length, very, very similar. Let's take a look now at these 4 pins in their posted form. All right, so now here is where we see all 4 pins posted, and the 2 top ones take on a different design element from the posting of the pins versus the 2 below them. And, you know, this is, I think, from a utilitarian perspective, where the Parker design is perfect for any type of writer, whether you like to write with your pins posted or unposted, because this is really one of the few designs that I don't mind writing with the pen posted. Most of my pins I generally never write with posted, and that's probably why this type of design is generally what I take to work. Not to mention, uncapping the pen is very easy because you're not having to worry about threads. Both the 601A, the 51A, really all of these types of designs post nice and deeply, and this one's no exception. And even though that cap is heavier, I don't notice really a big balance discrepancy as far as it being really back heavy. To me, it fits really nice in the webbing of my hand here, and it's very, very comfortable to write with, even in its posted form. And for those of you that have been watching my channel for a while, most of you probably know I don't really like to write with my pins posted, but this is one of the few designs that I will. Now, from a length perspective, obviously the 266/308 up here is the longest out of the 4 pins, but this pin doesn't post very deeply, and it's a pin that I don't generally write with posted because of that, because it's not a very comfortable and natural feeling for me. I think these 2 perfectly comfortable to write with posted because of that. You will notice that your 601A is a little bit longer, so if you're looking for length and maybe even a little bit from a weight perspective, this pin's going to be heavier than the 51A. So if you like a heavier, maybe more robust pin, then the 601A would be a good option with this metal cap up here. And there are differences. For instance, so we saw the weight for the 601A. When you look at, say, a the regular 601 with this kind of aluminum cap, the weight is going to be different. So you see 18.6 grams there. So if you have a 601, you haven't gotten the 601A because maybe you don't like the weight of the regular 601, this gold cap could be an option for you because I think it's a sound pen as from a utilitarian perspective as far as just how well it fits in the hand and how well you write with it. So up next, of course, we will do a writing sample, and then I will give my overall opinion of the pen at the very end. All right, so we're back for the writing sample and kind of jump into this. So again, we have the WingSung 601A. The ink that I'm using, it's clearly a green ink, and I'm not gonna lie, I put this ink in here a while ago and I don't remember which ink it is, so I'm not going to be able to tell you, and I apologize for that. Now this nib is labeled as a fine nib. I would say it's basically a fine nib. And I'll do a little bit of a comparison with my 601 that I have inked up, just so you can get a perspective, because there is a different filling with this nib, as well as I think the line width is a little bit greater with this nib than it is with the other one. Now I paid $22.80 for this pen. That was full everything, ship, everything. And I would say that you can get this pen, and that's about an average price for it. So depending on if this is something you're really interested in, plan on paying anywhere between probably $18 and maybe on the high end $24. I think I got probably right there in about the middle. So just bear that in mind. Now let's do an actual writing sample. Now, first thing you may notice, this is a pen can lay down some ink. I wouldn't say it's a gusher, but it definitely is not a dry writer. And I really like that about the pen as well. Now, real quick, I'm going to post this and kind of bring in our 601 here. Hopefully this one writes. Now, the reason why I say hopefully is, I don't know if you can see it on camera, but there's actually a crack. You can probably see it right there. There's actually a crack on this pen. Now, for those of you that are, this pen has gone to work with me every day. I've dropped this pen probably about 1,000,000 times. Hopefully you can kind of see the difference in line width there. There is a difference, and there's even a difference from a fill. This pen has a little bit more of a sweet spot. Now, as far as which one I prefer, it really just depends upon what paper I'm using. This pen here is perfect for cheap paper. This design, the original 601, is perfect for cheap paper because it is a finer line, it doesn't feather as much, and it doesn't have a bleed through like the cheaper paper does. Well, I apologize for that. I had to pause my video. The battery on my phone, I didn't realize my battery was so low. But what I was saying is that the regular 601 is great for cheap paper because it doesn't feather as much. But if I'm using, nicer paper, whether it be this Clairefontaine notebook or Rhodia or anything like that, I love using this pen. It just kind of glides across the paper. It does give you some feedback, but I think in a good way. Now, as far as line variation goes, this is not a pen that's really you're going to get any line variation. In fact, you can railroad it very easily. I would not recommend like pushing this, but again, it writes well. Again, wetness, not a gusher, but it does, I think, really produce a substantial amount of ink, but not too much ink to where, again, it's really difficult to write on different types of paper, for instance. Reverse writing, I don't ever really reverse write. This is a pen that you can get away with it, I think. A little bit scratchy, but now you're in like an extra fine or extra fine line, but definitely a pen that you can get away with reverse writing as far as that goes. You know, if you're doing like fast, if you're a really fast writer, I don't think you have to really deal with any skipping. I mean, even just seeing that, I don't know if you can tell. I mean, you can see the sheen from that ink. Even that way, it lays down a nice patch of ink, even if you're a fast writer. So I really give this feed props for its ability to keep up with any type of writing. And I think it really is a good combination with this nib. Now, one thing I didn't really show that much earlier is the nib. Probably should have showed it more, but you know, it says made in China across it. It has Chinese characters. I don't know if that stands for WingSung. I would assume it does. Nice two-tone nib, very reminiscent again of a Schaefer. You know, you've seen these nibs on like Hero fountain pens. I actually have one that has this almost identical nib. I will say this one does write better. So that was something else I just kind of wanted to show a little bit closer. Now, as far as rating goes, so I do kind of the same rating system that I did before. So we're going to talk about design first. So as far as design goes, I think this is, again, this design for me aesthetically is not bad. I wouldn't say that this design is gorgeous or beautiful or just wows me necessarily, but I think it's more from, like I was saying before, more utilitarian. It's great from just an overall writing perspective, but I'm going to give the design a 4.5 because I think it's solid. It may not be aesthetically crazy for me, but I do really think this cap is gorgeous. It gives kind of that vintage vibe. This pen overall gives a vintage vibe, but I really like the cap, and that's why I give the design a 4.5. Now, writing experience. You know, that one is obviously, you know, from my opinion, I mean, when I look at a pen as far as writing experience, how comfortable is it to write with, number one? How well does the nib and the feed produce and put ink on paper? And does it work on a lot of different types of paper? Now, I mean, I could give this pen a knock because, I mean, on cheaper paper, it does feather a little bit, but I have a lot of pens that feather way worse than this pen does. For writing experience, I'm going to give it a 4.5 as well. I considered going up to a 5 on this, but I didn't. And maybe I should go to a 5. I really, really enjoy writing with this pen. It's just a smooth pen to write with. It lays down a nice, consistent ink line, and I really like it. Build quality. I mean, build quality over time, I have to see how the pen holds up. I mean, there's a few things I can nitpick. For instance, you know, you saw the nicks back there on the bar. You know, you can see some, you know, marks where like certain things weren't finished. I would say build quality for me is, I would give it a solid 4 though, because I mean, I don't have any issues. The pen doesn't leak. I think the feed is excellent on this pen. I think it's great. There's, again, just maybe a few things you can nitpick about the pen, but I think for the price that you're paying, I think the build quality is very solid. Wow experience, and this is really just how the pen makes me feel. From a writing perspective, I love this pen. Aesthetically, it's not something that just totally just, oh, wow, I just love looking at it. Like, it's not a piece of art necessarily. So I give it a 3.5, and maybe that's a little bit rough. But there's other pens that I maybe get more excited to write with because while they are nice writers, they're also aesthetically pleasing to write with or look at. So that's the only reason why I give it, from a wow perspective, a 3.5. I don't always feel myself wanting to grab this pen when I'm at home. However, at work, this pen works for that perspective because I can quickly uncap it, quickly recap it, and I can use it and write with it on different types of paper typically. Very similar to the 601. This one still is my daily carry every day. Even with the crack, I'm still using it. I'm going to use it until it's pretty much dead and gone. And this pen is my second go-to at work. So overall, my overall rating of this pen, I'm going to go with a 4. And it's a great pen. I really, really enjoy it. I don't feel like it's an average pen. I don't think it deserves like a 2.5 or a 3. It is a very, very good pen. Again, aesthetically, you know, I think this design's been used so much that maybe it just doesn't do a ton for me. But from a writing perspective, a mechanical perspective, I think the pen does very well. I think that feed is excellent. However they design that feed, whatever it is made out of, whether it be plastic or whatnot, the feed is great. It works perfectly with that nib. Hopefully, if you get one of these pens, it will work as well as mine does. I'm actually considering getting another one because of how nice the pen writes. Maybe trying out a different cap design. Again, there are several different cap designs out there. There's like a grid pattern. There's all sorts of different ones and different colors for that matter. So go, I know they're available on eBay. There's several different sellers that have them available on eBay. Shop around, see what price you feel comfortable with. Look at the seller's ratings to kind of get an idea if they're a seller that you want to purchase from, and pull the trigger. I don't think you'll regret it. The pen for me writes beautifully. It has a really nice ink capacity. That's the other thing I didn't really talk about that I should have. So that's another really good benefit. If you're looking for a good workhorse pen to use for school or work, this could be a pen too that I would consider. This pen, again, I have dropped this pen 100 times. It's been in my shirt pocket. It's been thrown in a bag. It's been left random places. I think I've lost it 2 or 3 times by accident. It's gone so many different places with me, and it has continued to write through all of the pain that I've put it through. I baby all my other pens, but this poor thing I have been very, very hard on. You can just tell by looking at the cap. I mean, look at all those surface scratches. I feel bad for this pen, but it has really done its purpose, and that is being a writing instrument. Until next time, everyone, I will be doing a pen news video, I promise. It may take me a little bit of time, but I will continue doing pen reviews. I enjoy doing them, and in fact, I haven't even inked this up. Got it a couple days, so I'm sure you guys already know what this pen is, but it's a new design or new color that I got. So I'm excited. I'll do a kind of a review on this as far as just kind of compare it to my other Fully one that I have. But that will be a review, and I've actually got a couple other pins I'll probably even do before that. So I have plenty to do. Just stay tuned. Until next time though, everyone, please take care out there. Bye-bye.